What's going on, everybody? Here's Tom here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build Kazuha, how to build his artifacts, weapons, all that kind of stuff. Now, I do apologize, I'm very late to this video. I haven't done a Genshin guide in a while, and I've been meaning to do this Kazuha guide for quite some time, but I have just been busy doing Overwatch content, Overwatch guides and stuff, so I do apologize. But I have got him to where I want for the most part. Now, I don't have all of his talents leveled up to the max because I don't have a good way of defeating Ashtaha. If anybody knows any good ways to defeat Ashtaha, let me know down in the comments. But besides that, I think I've pretty much maxed him out besides getting him to level 90. He's level 80, but yeah. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into the video. So I want to start off with Kazuha's talents. Obviously, he's a sword user, and I'll talk more about the weapons later. So his first talent is his skill, obviously. So what this does is you can either press it or hold it. If you press it, it just puts you in the sky, and if you hold it, it actually groups enemies together. So if you hold it, the group enemies together, and when you do a plunging attack, it puts this vortex out, and it will combine with whatever element is nearby. So if you're near fire or pyro, sorry, it will combine with pyro, or electro, it'll combine with electro. And so it will combine the elements and deal some damage. And that's mostly just to get some particles. Then his burst I'll show more in the showcase, or showcase, but more in the playstyle. But it's this big AoE field, and it combines also with whatever elements it comes into contact with, and will deal additional damage of that type, whatever type element it combines with. Alright, so here's the talent I was talking about right here, the passive talent. So when you do a plunging attack, once you use your skill, when you're in the air, you will put this vortex around you and will deal an additional 200% attack of the absorbed damage type, whatever type it is. And I actually didn't know this until I really read it, but the plunging attack, it will count as plunging attack damage, not based on your skill damage. So it would be wise to upgrade your normal attack as well for the plunging attack damage. But yeah, that would be considered plunging attack damage. And this is where most of Kazuha's kit comes from, in my opinion. So upon triggering a swirl reaction, all party members will gain a 0.04% elemental damage bonus to the element absorbed. So if you absorb pyro, you'll get 0.4% for every point of elemental mastery Kazuha has for 8 seconds. So this is very useful for if you're trying to buff. He's basically like a buffer. Now, his skill and his burst can deal damage over time, obviously ANEMO damage and stuff. And there's several different builds you can do, and I'll talk about that in the artifact section. But the main one you'll be going for is a support Kazuha or a carry, where you will be putting a lot of elemental mastery into him for this. And this will be just like a huge buff. So if you have like a pyro DPS you're trying to buff, such as like D-Luke, or I have Yanfei in this team, or somebody that he really works well with, or what elements he works well with, I should say, is Hydro. So if you have a really good Hydro DPS, such as Ayato or Child, somebody like that, that's a really good Hydro DPS, you can buff them and boost them. I don't personally have either of those characters. I really do want them. That's probably one of the next characters I'm going to get, so I can swap out this team to be Hydra based instead of Pyro based. But not that Pyro base is bad, I just kind of want to build different teams. But yeah, he is basically just a big buffer. He'll buff your Pyro damage, Hydra damage, whatever. I'd say Pyro and Hydra is probably the best to buff, but this is where most of his kit, in my opinion, comes from, is him buffing your team. And then, of course, his third passive talent decreases sprinting stamina consumption for your own party. Not very useful, but in certain situations it may prove useful. So that's his talents. And what I would say to level up first is definitely the burst. As like I said, that's where most of your kit comes from. And then I would say your skill, and then your normal attack. As this right here, it does count as plunging attack damage. That right there, that AoE, it does count as plunging attack damage. And something I didn't actually show is you can actually jump into the air before doing this. So you can do like this, and also do it. So he could be good for exploration because of that too, trying to like climb a mountain or something, go up like that. kind of like Venti. But yeah, that's pretty much it for his talents. Like I said, level his burst, skill, and then his normal attack. And most of his kit comes from this passive talent. So, and I'll talk more about the builds, the elemental mastery, and stuff later. So that's for talents. Alright, guys. So over here in Sumeru, finding some fungi. So I do want to show a little bit of how to use Kazuha better. His playstyle. It's pretty straightforward, but I do want to go over a few things before I find them. So most of all, when you're using Kazuha, it's going to be mainly for a grouping effect, for grouping your enemies together and dealing a ton of damage to that group in that swirl effect with your skill or with your burst. Now, it can be good for single targets to deal damage to single targets as well. So he's very versatile. He can work for groups of enemies. It's not like, you know, Sucrose, where if you have a really strong enemy, like a Kairagi or something, you can't really group them and can't really deal a bunch of damage. Her, she's mainly a grouping, but he can actually do both. He can be a grouping, although he's better at the grouping damage, he can also deal damage to single targets and do single target damage as well. Of course, because his burst buffs your damage that you deal based on whatever element is combined. So, for example, Pyro or Hydra in this team. So I'll show a little bit. You can see my base damage here with Yanfei, kind of. Of course, I'm not using my other sports. And then, well, if it'll let me. As you see, it groups your enemies up and deals a ton of damage like that. And so that's a skill. And I don't know if I'm going to actually be able to show the burst here. Okay. I'll be back so I can show the burst. So we're gonna spar with Masanori real quick. I didn't expect Kazuha to destroy those enemies so quickly. Let me get my burst real quick. Okay, so I'll show my base damage with just Yanfei. And then I'll show it boosted with Kazuha. So that's the base damage, getting around 5,000, 8,000 sometimes. And I'll use burst. As you can see, it is boosted a bit. You can tell more of a difference with Venice burst as well. As you can see. And of course, I guess I didn't really say it, but you don't have to use this burst to get it. It's just whenever you combine elements, so you can get from a skill as well. So, like this. And you can get the buff as well that way. I'm not really able to show it very well here, but I can show it better in the Spiral Abyss. So once I do Spiral Abyss, I'll be able to show it better. But yeah, that's most of his kit. Just getting your swirls, getting more damage for DPS, fire DPS, whatever. That's unfortunate. Anyways, that's most of Kazuha, and then getting the boost with your burst or your skill. Either one, so that's most of his kit, and I'll show it better in the playstyle, so that's most of Kazuha, and as you can see, it does damage over time, but it's not really as good as the buff. Like, you're using it mainly for the buff, so that's it for the playstyle. Okay, so real quick, I want to talk a little bit about Kazuha's weapons. So there's only a few select weapons I would really recommend. Obviously, you got his signature weapon that's on his banner. So you can use that, obviously, and you won't go wrong with that. Now, what I'm using here is Tokebo Shigiri, and it is a weapon that you get from an event, I believe, not too far back. I don't exactly remember which event it was. I believe it was the one where there's like a ghost lady that you were playing that game with. I don't know. Somebody have to remind me. But anyway, it gives you elemental mastery, gives you 165 level 90, and the effect it gives you is good as well, I guess, but it's not really that amazing. But I just use it for the elemental mastery. Now, a better weapon for him would actually be the sacrificial sword, but I only have 2 sacrificial swords right here, so I'm not using it. And also Favonius, but I only have 1 Favonius sword, so I'm using it on Kuki, so I'm not going to switch it off. I kind of want to use a weapon for each character, not have to switch around so much. Maybe eventually I'll get another sacrificial sword, but I would recommend using sacrificial sword the most on him, as the energy recharge is good, and to get the skill to recharge gives you more particles and is able to use your burst more often. And I probably will use this in the showcase just to show how much better it is than this, to how fast you get your burst and stuff, because you're going to use your burst a lot. You're going to be needing to use your burst a lot. So I would definitely say Sacrificial Sword is what you should use first of all. Going for a more free-to-play option, of course, if you don't have the 5-star weapon, that's a signature weapon, which I assume most people don't. Most people are probably like me and don't go for weapon banners. I honestly don't think they're really worth it. So I would say Sacrificial Sword, and then if you don't have Sacrificial Sword, or if you don't have a free Sacrificial Sword to put on them like I don't, use Tokubo Shigure if you have it, as it gives you Elemental Mastery. It gives you a ton of Elemental Mastery, as you can see. I have 867 because of it. But yeah, use Sacrificial Sword first of all. Oh, and if you don't have Sacrificial Sword, use Favonius Sword. That can also be good. Not as good as Sacrificial, but it can be good. And then third option would be Tokubo Shigure if you don't have any of those. So yeah, that's what I would recommend for the weapons. So for artifact sets, you're obviously going to want to do Viridescent Venerer. If not Viridescent Venerer, you can do Desert Pavilion, but that doesn't really help you as much as the Viridescent Venerer. So definitely do Viridescent Venerer. That's the number one set that I would recommend. Nothing else would really come close, except for maybe the Dreams, Gilded Dreams, as increases your Elemental Mastery by 80. And I suppose that could be good, but 100% just go for Viridescent Venerer. I know personally a good set of Viridescent Venerer can be hard to get, but of course remember that you have the strong boxes over here that you can use for the Viridescent Venerer. Down here somewhere. Right there. Okay. So you can also do the strong box, so remember that. You can do that for Viridescent Venerer. So if you do struggle getting a good set, remember that you also have the strong box to do. So yeah. Artifact stats, definitely 100% Viridescent Venerer. So for artifact stats, it's going to be pretty straightforward for Kazuha, depending on what build you go for. So if you're going for a Elemental Mastery build, a support build, or a carry build, you're gonna want to just forget about crit and everything almost completely. It's not very relevant for this build, as you're gonna need Elemental Mastery a lot. So look for Elemental Mastery in everything, in your sands, your goblet, and your circlet, and substats as well. If you have anything with Elemental Mastery substats on it, get it, because you're gonna need it for the buff for his second passive talent. So Elemental Mastery is the best for that. Now, a weird build for Kazuha, but I suppose could be good, is if you want to make him more like a sub DPS, you could go for like Elemental Mastery on the sands just to have a little bit of balance. And then you can go for like ANEMO damage bonus on the goblet and then crit on the circlet. But that would be a bit strange. That'd be more of a sub DPS build. I'm sure, it is viable. I'm sure that you can do it. But the one build that I would say to do is the Elemental Mastery, all Elemental Mastery build, to get those points for that buff in your talents, in your passive talent. And I have 867 Elemental Mastery. Now, I think that's a good amount. I think he has the most amount out of any of my teams, especially because of the weapon. But yeah, that's it for the artifact stats, pretty much. And as you can see, I don't really have any crits. I have a lot of crit damage, not really crit rate. Crit doesn't really matter on this kind of build. Now, if you're going for the other build with like animal damage bonus and stuff, obviously it could be good and it could matter. Crit could matter, but for the most part, don't worry about crit. Just worry about getting the Elemental Mastery. And of course, if you have a lot of Elemental Mastery and you're using a weapon like Tokubo Shigure, and you don't have a weapon that has energy recharge on it, you can use energy recharge on your sands instead. So if you have like around 600 to 700 Elemental Mastery with a weapon, and you don't need the sands to be Elemental Mastery, you can get energy recharge. So that can be good as well. And I'd say a good range for Elemental Mastery is somewhere between like 500, 600 to like 700 or 800. That'd be a good range, I would say. Every bit of Elemental Mastery can help you. So that's why I say on the substats, look for Elemental Mastery and energy recharge for the most part. So yeah, that's it for the artifact stats for Kazuha. Okay, so for team comps, it's pretty straightforward. You're not gonna really want to do a build like most ANEMO characters. As you can see, like for Wander, I have double pyro, double ANEMO. He's not really an ANEMO booster like Farazan or Venti or whatever, where you can have two ANEMO characters. I mean, of course, I guess you can, but it's mainly for boosting your pyro damage. As I mean, you can't. Your buff goes for whatever elements is infused, and I mean, you can't exactly infuse ANEMO with ANEMO, so it's not really gonna help ANEMO characters. But it's mainly to boost your characters. Now I'm doing Yanfei because, I mean, I already have a Diluc team, and I want to make another Diluc team. I don't have a Hydro DPS. In fact, I don't even have many Hydro characters in general. I only have three Hydro characters, I think. Mona, Barbara, and Xingqiu. Xingqiu is more of a sub DPS slash support. But anyways, you want to have a main DPS that you can buff. Now, Hu-Tao can work as well. Raichugan can work as well in like an Electro Charge team. Anything like that. The only thing I would say not to do is like Geo. Like Ito wouldn't really work with him, as you can't. Again, you can't infuse ANEMO with the elements like Geo or ANEMO or Dendro. So those would be the only ones I wouldn't recommend. Is I wouldn't use Dendro, Geo, or ANEMO along with Kazuha. But anything else would work. Hydro DPS, Pyro DPS, Electro DPS, even Cryo DPS would work. Anything like that would work very well. And like I said, Ayato and Child will work very well with them. And I may switch my team up once I do get one of those. But a team like this works very well. And obviously with Yanfei, Bennett works really well. Xingqiu works really well with Yanfei and Kazuha. So just get a really good DPS, your best DPS that you have, or a good one that you want to build. Like Yanfei is a really great DPS, even though she's 4-star. I'm going to be making a build on her sometime soon as well, because she's just so good. Better than some 5-stars, honestly. Honestly, she can even be better than Diluc. Especially in this team. But, yeah, just buff your DPS. Get a DPS that you can buff. And he can work very well with Diluc, as many of you may know, Diluc's damage, 4 or 5-star at least, is pretty damn underwhelming. So, I would definitely say he would work very well, especially if you're doing somebody like Bennett and Xingqiu and Kazuha. Or, well, Bennett and Kazuha can really buff your damage. It's basically like a double buff. And really, if you want to, you could triple buff your team if you had Mona here instead of Xingqiu. And I really don't know how Mona works. I do know she buffs her damage. I don't know how. And I may do a guide on her in the future. But I've barely leveled her, let alone read her talent information. But you could triple buff your team by having Bennett, Pyro DPS, Mona, and then Kazuha. So triple buff your DPS. But anyways, that's most of the team comps. Alright, so here comes the showcase. Now, I do believe I'm going to be doing 411. If that changes, that's because that I couldn't beat 411. But I did beat 411 with this team, so I believe I'm going to be doing 411. And I will switch out with Kazuha's weapon, or Kaya's weapon, sorry. Sacrificial sword that he's using. Because I want to show how often you can get your burst. So I will be using that. And it's not to say Tokubo Shigure is bad. It's just I feel like this is a lot better than it. Even though you get Elemental Mastery with it, I mean, I still have 702, and that's most... Like, that's more than most of the other characters I have that are ANEMO based, as you can see. Still, even without the weapon, so, yeah. Definitely, I would say use the Sacrificial Sword. But yeah, that's what I'm going to be using here. And of course, my talents are not leveled up too much. I may level the normal attack up before I go real quick, if I can. But for the most part, I don't have enough books. I didn't farm enough books for that. And I don't know how to kill Ajdaha very well. So I don't have those leveled up. I may make another guide in the future, whenever he has a rerun or something, and reform it a bit after I've leveled him up to level 90 and gotten his talents leveled up a bit. But this is how it stands right now.
Everybody stand back! Get out of here!
Fallen leaves, adorn my night! Into the wind!
Rain cutter, know my sword! Breath of the flame, boom boom! Get out of here!
The wind knows me. Into the wind. Clouds high. The birds come.
No, my sword! Witness the power of Kazuha! Everybody stand back!
The wind knows me. Time to get as one with wind and cloud.
Invisible evidence! Incinerate! Teamwork is dreamwork! That's gonna hurt in the morning. Rain cutter!
One with nature. Fallen leaves. Adorn my night.
I'm going in! Boom boom! Breath of the flame! Incinerate! Teamwork is dreamwork!
The wind knows me. Clouds high. The birds come.
Boom boom!
Behold,
Get out of
the
here!
abyss has
Witness the power of Kazuha! Know my sword!
One with nature. Into the wind. Clouds high. The birds come.
Everybody stand back! Time for your arraignment! Incinerate!
the light shines. The gift of grace, the name of the truth, the power of revelation.
Teamwork is rain cutter! Know my sword!
Free.
One with nature.
Motion to compel! Off we go!
Time to go. Into the wind.
And
Fallen
hope
leaves.
find
Adorn my
you.
night.
Rain outlines your fate. Boom boom! Everybody stand back! Let me weave you a
The wind knows me.
motion to compel. Teamwork is
As one with wind and cloud. Into the wind.
invisible evidence. Incinerate. I heard you. Know my sword. Witness the power. I'm going in.
The wind knows me.
Motion to compel. Power flows
Clouds high.
through me.
The birds come.
Got you. Out of my sight. Teamwork is dream. Rain outlines your fate. Know my sword. Let me weave you a breath of the flame. Got you.
Fallen leaves. Adorn my night. One with nature. Into the wind.
Incinerate.
Alright, so that was it for the showcase. I hope this video helped everybody. I hope that showcase was alright. I know it took a while for me to get through that showcase, and the first part, I think I failed the first star. I lost the first star. I already gotten it before anyway, but most of this is just to show the damage and stuff, the buff that he can give. Now, I will be showing another showcase later on once I level Yanfei up a bit more. Well, she's level 90, but once I get her talents leveled up a bit more, maybe get some better artifacts. And I'm going to level up Bennett to level 90 and Jingxiu level 90, get their talents leveled up. And then I'm going to be showing a full, like, on showcase, showing them all together. And then, of course, I'm going to level up Kazuha's talents and stuff, too. I was just kind of in a rush to get this done because I was worrying about getting Overwatch stuff done, and I completely forgot that I was supposed to be building Kazuha for a video, and just in general for myself too. And I was like, oh crap, I gotta do that. So I didn't really have a chance to get the talents to like level 8 or 9 like I wanted to. But I hope this kind of showed how much damage he can do and how much a buff he can give. You can really show the huge buff that he gives in there, because I think I got up to like 20 to 30 or 40,000 damage in there. When I normally don't do that much as Yanfei, I only do like 10,000 or so on her own, maybe 12,000, depending on the enemy, if they're weaker enemies or stronger enemies. But anyways, yeah, he's a really, really great character, and he's really fun to play. And like I said, Sacrificial Sword I would use on him. However, I just can't, like, all the time because I have to switch the characters, and I use Kaya in my Diluc team. So it's kind of hard, to switch between them. But yeah, I hope this video did help some people. And if this video did help you, make sure you subscribe, and I'll see everybody in the next video. Bye.